And welcome back. Let's talk about a man called John Sage. What a psycho. Please don't haunt me. So John Sage was one of the most sadistic killers in history and is known as Britain's most evil ghost. So just to start with, John Sage was described as being a handsome but brutal soldier. I don't know why they have to clarify that he was handsome, but you know, maybe it's just to make clear that not all handsome people are nice, just in case you didn't know that. But anyway, so he was a lieutenant under King Edward I. He apparently was just very hateful of everyone. He hated his men. He even hated his horse. I don't know what his horse did to him, but he hated his horse. Poor thing. He hated having less power than he thought he deserved. But most of all, he hated William Wallace and the people of Scotland that were rebelling at this time. So King Edward marched his army north in the hopes of a full-on battle with William Wallace. But it was, quote, a never-ending series of hit-and-run attacks from the Scots. End quote. I always imagine like them jumping out of bushes and just slicing people here and there and then jumping back out of the way, then coming back and slice. It really took a toll on his army anyway. That also included John Sage. Now, John Sage was injured, his leg was injured, so it meant that he would never see battle again, unfortunately, and he did not like this. He wanted King Edward to assign him another job. He didn't want to be useless. So King Edward then decided to assign John as the chief jailer, interrogator and torturer at Chillingham Castle. I actually began this research with the intention of talking about Chillingham Castle, and then it got onto John Sage, and he was just really interesting, and I feel like he needed a video for himself, so here we are. And he'd love that, wouldn't he? Basically, he would, or any Scottish people that were captured, they would be thrown in jail, and John would then interrogate them, torture them to find out the whereabouts of William Wallace, because Wallace just basically vanished in battle and they really needed to know where he was to end him. So John was basically tasked to get this information out of the Scottish people. But I mean, he took it to like a whole other level. So John Sage had a couple of nicknames, one being John Dragfoot, which I thought was very creative, you know, because of his leg, and also the Butcher of the Scots, which again is pretty straightforward. So I feel like he absolutely loved his job. Like, he finally found his passion in life, and normally I'd be happy for someone who has finally found their calling, but in this case not so much. So just to give you an idea of what kind of man we're talking about here, he likely tortured and killed about 50 people per week for 3 years, which amounts to about over 7,000 Scottish people who were tortured and killed at his hands, which is insane. That is a crazy, crazy amount of people to kill. I mean, wow. Is there anyone else in the world who has killed that many people? I'm not sure. So he had a few methods of torture. He had, a few devices that he liked to use, including the wheel, the Iron Maiden, the iron chair, and the rack. So I didn't really find much information on the others, but the rack was basically used to stretch someone until their joints popped. And it is said that today, if you were to visit this place, Chillingham Castle, and stand by the torture rack thing, you would hear bones popping, joints popping, whatever. So you'll hear the ghost's joints popping away, which sounds great. He also really enjoyed starving his victims to death, boiling them, impaling them. And he invented his own torture device. Very creative man. So it was a barrel with iron nails inside, and when the victim was put inside, he would basically then roll them across the side, to the other side of the chambers. which basically skinned the victim alive because they'd be rolling around in there and the nails are obviously doing their stuff. So that's horrific. Also, apparently his actual favourite torture, I said the rack was his favourite. I guess I lied, because another way of torturing people he really enjoyed was, it was a cage that kept the victims tight inside. I don't know why. But basically they were squeezed into that. He lit a fire and he hung them over it. So they were pretty much just slow cooked over this fire. He also enjoyed choking his victims. So he was open to many ways of killing someone. He wasn't just focused on one. He was quite experimental. So in 1298, 3 years after John was doing his thing, killing all these people, William Wallace was finally found. And after the Battle of Falkirk, King Edward's cavalry destroyed what was left after... What did I even write here? English archers broke up the Scottish formations. However, Wallace escaped again. But after that, the rebellion was over. Okay. I don't know how, factual I've got my facts there, but that's pretty much what happened apparently. So King Edward returned south after getting basically fed up with the war. He was just sick of it, really. So this meant that poor John was getting really, really low on victims. I don't know how he coped with that. Well, actually I do know. I'm about to tell you. So John was ordered by King Edward to release the prisoners. You can imagine how he felt about that. But he did as he was told. They were orders after all. He had to release the prisoners, so he did. So the only place they could go was out into the courtyard. So he let them out into the courtyard and off they wandered. However, what he did do in advance, he built a humongous bonfire. Bonfire, not Bondfire. James Bonfire. He built a humongous bonfire, and it was said that it was so hot that if you were within 30 foot of it, you would cook. I don't know if it means literally cook or if you would just be so hot you were cooking. The prisoners all died a slow and agonizing death because this was the only... So I guess he just let him into the courtyard, shut the doors, and they just burn. I can't really imagine that. But do you know what I mean? I can't imagine this massive bonfire in this courtyard and they just died in it. It was so big. Whatever. It must have took him a lot of preparation. And I wonder how King Edward felt about that. He just told him to let him go. He didn't say kill them. So whatever. But anyway, before he let all these people out, he took the children of these people to a gallery room to watch their parents and older siblings die. Do you think that John had mercy on these children? Don't be stupid. Of course he didn't. He got a small axe, and which is apparently still on display at Chillingham Castle. Killed them all one by one with a small axe. Can you actually imagine? That's disgusting and horrific. But he did that. And then he was like, oh, all these bloody bodies now. I prepared a bonfire earlier. He's not Australian, but... And he threw the bodies on the bonfire. So 2 for 1 sort of thing going on here. Handy bonfire to dispose of bodies after axing children to death. As you can imagine, it stunk. And it was so smelly that it was actually noticed at a place called Bamburgh Castle, which was over 10 miles away. But don't worry, because John is going to get his just desserts. And this is how. So basically, there were a group of cattle thieves called the Border Ravers. They were English and Scottish rogues, exiles, peasants, etc. They didn't have any loyalty to England or Scotland. They were just all merged into one and became a happy little union, basically. And they were actually allies of King Edward. So it seemed to be a peaceful time now, which is good. But there was a lady called Mary Charlton who was the daughter of a border reiver chief, so someone very high up in the gang or group, whatever you want to call it, and very powerful. So she stayed at Chillingham Castle. It was said, we don't know why she was there, but it was said that she was either there as a hostage or there for protection. I don't feel like she was there as a hostage, if I'm honest. I don't see why she'd be there as a hostage if King Edward and these people were allies. So I just say she was there for protection for some reason. But basically, she started an affair with no other than our boy John Sage, because he was handsome, so he can get the ladies. I wonder if she knew what he'd actually done, though. That's the thing. Well, maybe he did, because they were apparently having rough sex on the stretching rack. That's really hot. And John was choking her in a sexy way, but he just went a bit too far, really, because he's a violent man. He doesn't know his limits, and killed her. This would be a very costly mistake, John. Oh, and it was. Mary's father, as I said earlier, was powerful, and you don't mess with this guy, okay? He demanded that King Edward hand John over to him for justice, or revenge, really, isn't it? And I don't know, I read that apparently King Edward didn't really give a shit about John, so it was just like, okay, have him, don't care. I don't know if that was true or not, but maybe King Edward was like, this guy is actually a bastard, so I don't actually care anymore. So yeah, John was captured and he was tortured with his own torture devices. Isn't that something? He was then publicly hanged with a short rope, which means that he choked to death slowly rather than his neck breaking. And his execution was viewed by a huge crowd consisting of relatives of the victims of John. So they were like, yes, boy, let's go. He was still just about alive. All these victims' families basically ran forward and started to cut into his naked body. Oh my God, they cut off his fingers, ears, nose, toes, genitals, anything that stuck out, I feel, they just cut off. Which, for anyone else, I'd be like, oh my God, that's awful, like, poor guy, but no one cares. This John, he's killed 7,000 people at this point, butchered children to death. He deserved it. Let's just be honest, he deserved it. So they basically then disposed of his body, or what was left of it, I don't know what was left of it really, in a cesspit, which, if you don't know, is an underground tank that collects sewage. So just disposed of like a piece of shit, literally. So, and that's that. So his ghost haunts Chillingham Castle and surrounding areas, apparently. I don't know why this is funny. It's kind of, well, it is funny. It is said that he's on the hunt for his missing body parts. Where's my dick? Where's my dick? Where's my dick? So, yeah, and he cannot go to hell. It's said to join his master. Was that right? Until his collection is complete. So until he's got all his body parts back. Because you can't go to hell without your finger, your little pinky. That's just not allowed. He also tries to choke visitors of the castle, like, you know, today, if you know what I mean. If you went there now, you might be choked by John. Depends if you're into that kind of thing, but be careful because he does go a bit overboard sometimes. But yeah, that was yeah. So he is, like I said, known as the most evil ghost in Britain. But yep, that is the story of John Sage. I feel like my next video is actually going to be about Chillingham Castle, although I feel like John is the main event. So I don't know how long that video will be. Probably not very long. But yes, thank you so much for watching, and you will see me again soon. Happy New Year, take care of yourselves, and yeah, I'll see you later.